Okay, we are live. We are here today with Destiny Dunn, not visually because we were having a little bit of technical issues, but do have the audio feed coming through pretty strong, so that is perfect. We're doing our third episode of the Women in Tech webinar series for CS Adventure, which just introduces young girls to some powerful women in the industry to get an idea of where they came from and where they can go. So today we're with Destiny Dunn. She is a former alumni of West Virginia University, and she is part of West Virginia University's Game Developers Club. So Destiny, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Destiny. I've just graduated with a computer science degree. Uh, I have been the vice president of the Game Developers Club for, 2 years now. I'm currently, working full-time position at a local business in West Virginia, who's also a tech company.
Perfect,
Um,
perfect. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience at West Virginia University and what got you to enter computer sciences. What was your specific major?
I was specifically a computer scientist, a bachelor of science.
Okay, perfect. And what inspired you? Was there a moment in either your K-12 experience or what kind of really inspired you to pursue that kind of career?
So entering college, I wasn't really, sure what I wanted to do. I started out, I was good with math. I liked computers, but I had never really, I didn't really understand code. And, I got the list of all the majors at WU, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try one. You can always change later. And really, the moment that I had decided that I absolutely loved it was in my first computer science class.
Really,
I had
that first exposure?
it wasn't necessarily the first, well, I guess you could say it was the first exposure to computer science. I, never really seen code before. And we had just, my computer science class, we had just gotten past, some of the theory behind it. And, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I was like, okay, I'm going to, give this a good solid try. And I found myself just absolutely loving it. I really connected to it in a way that it was the way that I also thought. The logic behind it was also the logic of how things are structured. But I also found, even though it was challenging, it also allowed a lot of creative freedom. And I absolutely love art. I love being imaginative and seeing uh, things being, created. So when I was given the opportunity to have a free customability to make anything I wanted, that really spoke to me. But also I could see how, the world was changing. The more people were going to need web developers or application developers for all kinds of reasons, and I stuck with it. And the more I, develop, the more I program, the more I love it.
Perfect. And that's what, with our Google Rise program, a lot of it is just, exposing the girls to computer science at a young age so that they understand that computers aren't scary and that computer science isn't just about putting numbers into a computer. It's about like the freedom to create what they want to create. And I love that you just said that. Do you think that if you had experience with it in K-12 or at a younger age, it would have helped you?
Oh, definitely. I know I was one of the few people that I met in college in a computer science degree that had never even had any exposure. The where I went to high school didn't offer any computer science classes or any programming of any sort. Our highest level was basic knowledge of Word and maybe even the Adobe suite. And that was some of the most computer exposure that anyone got that I graduated high school. And I definitely feel like if I had some opportunity, early stages of life, it would have been a step forward once I had gotten to college. So I'd be like, okay, I've already seen this before. I'm not entirely lost.
Absolutely, absolutely. My high school didn't offer anything except for the like the Word and the Microsoft kind of Office. So I completely
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from, especially in a rural kind of area. Their computer science education is minimal in K through 12. So I definitely think it's helpful to just give them a little bit of exposure so they understand different problem solving and the logic behind it, because it's not complicated. It's just pattern recognition for
Yeah.
a lot of the students to realize that. So when you were in college, did you have a lot, what was the breakdown of male versus female in your classes? And did you ever have any obstacles that you had to overcome in your college career as a female in computer science?
Often, I know even like when I was in my senior level classes, I had classes that I would be the only female. Um, Early on, like I had a couple people who were also female, but as time went on, the classes got a little bit smaller, and you'd see less and less girls in the classes. I don't know if I'd say I'd have any like specific obstacles due to my own gender, but I did have situations where, you know, a teacher would be like, "Oh, it's nice to have girls in the class." And, it kind of felt weird, like it should almost be normal that I should be in here, but at the same time, like, teachers are using more masculine examples, or I would sometimes be singled out because I would be a female. You know, I would be almost expected to know something rather than, a guy. Um, and in my classes, maybe I wasn't necessarily taken serious. I've always been at the top, I always had some of the top grades, but that didn't really necessarily mean something for everyone. It was more competition between the guys kind of horror deal.
Right.
It didn't really, yeah.
So we on the last day of our camps that we did in the last 2 weeks, we talk about some psychological barriers like stereotype threat and imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those, but they're exactly what you just described. And that stereotype threat is that women in computer science or women in any kind of STEM field kind of have this stereotype against them that they won't be that good at it, so they don't even try.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what you described, but you perfectly described imposter syndrome, and that high achieving individuals, even though you could have the best grades in your class, you still feel like you don't belong there just because of the inability for the rest of the group to deal with that. Especially as a female in a high level senior class with you're the only one in there with a bunch of males. That's exactly what you're describing. And it's just we wanted to expose the young girls to understand that this is something they would face if they were interested in it. So it's interesting to hear that you had already kind of felt those feelings just alone in your college career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you graduated this last, it was May, correct?
Yes, I graduated last May.
Perfect. And then did you have any, what was the, like going into your interviews with that kind of background? Did you have any obstacles that you had to overcome, or did you have any issues?
I was fortunate enough to actually find a company that was woman owned.
Oh,
And I I know that's exactly my reaction. I was really impressed by it. And I, put my foot forward when I found that company, and I interviewed, and I fell in love with, the company themselves. And I don't know how to describe it, but it was just, when you find a good fit for yourself in a company like that. And I don't know how to describe it, but there wasn't really any obstacles. I could say, like, I didn't know that, there's people around me that were all complaining, that they couldn't find jobs and they couldn't do anything. But I know I personally put myself out there. I made sure to apply to as many places as I could. I went to career fairs. I was interactive as much as I could and networked. I was super nervous though. Like the entire time. Oh, go ahead.
No, I said understandably. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I first did my first interview, I was asked a whole bunch of questions that I, didn't really know, but I didn't really like. I didn't let that discourage me. I was honest with them. You know, they asked me a question that I didn't know, I would just say, I don't know that. Or if they continued on, can explain it, I might actually know a bit of it. I always found that kind of interesting, that even though, I might not have known everything, that people were still like, that's okay. Interviews aren't supposed to be stressful, but they kind of are intimidating when you first start out on them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of we instill in that, even if you don't know something, asking questions and like ensuring that you can learn it is more important than not knowing it right away. Just making sure that you're teachable. I want to back up a second to and this was a question that we had in our middle school camp when Gabby, who is a member of the Game Developers Club, came into our classrooms and she taught the kids. And we had a little girl ask her if she thought it was possible for girls to learn computer science because they had been told it was too hard. And I want you to talk a little bit more about the curriculum that you went through and how you didn't know any of that before you went into it. And was it difficult, and what kind of resources or tools did you need to get through the harder classes?
So when starting out, like I mentioned before, I didn't know any computer science. I was absolutely, blind going into college. And I, stressed myself almost, the point that I was sick and the beginning of college. But, you have to start somewhere. You have to start at some point. You might not be the best in the beginning, and you might not be, you might struggle at it at first. But if you keep putting, your effort into it and your time into it, as long as you're passionate about it, and even, you don't even have to be talented. There's a point where if you're, passionate about it, you can do anything you want. And it kind of took me some time to realize this in college. I have had great, college scores, but I focused on, curriculum and learning. I spent a lot of time finding tutorials online, even if they're little things, and working them out. There's tons of websites and resources online. Challenge yourself to make something, even if the thing already exists. If you want to make, an app, but make sure you start kind of small and work your way up. I think practice is very important in the field like this, and keeping up to date with what's new. But that doesn't, like, no one's going to expect you to, like, know everything.
Absolutely.
And yeah, even in my harder classes, some classes I walked in there and, they said that we're going to use a language that I have never known. One of my greatest resources was my professors. I never hesitated to ask a question when I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that was one, feature, one of the things that made me, progress the way I did. Because if you don't know something, that's one of the best ways to learn, is from someone who may have had the same issue or the same problem as you.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about, you said asking your teachers. Was there anybody that stood out in your time at WVU or before, or even now, that you view as your mentor in this field, or particularly if it's a woman who has really impacted you from your time? Is there somebody that sticks out, and how did they influence you to be where you are today?
I have a few people like that. In particular, I don't know if you've mentioned before, but Dr. Vanskoy at WVU was a great mentor. She really loved her students, and you can tell that by how she interacts with them. And she was always there to kind of inspire you. A lot of professors will, of course, give you, the instructions on how to do something, but instead she would almost give you something that she didn't know if was even possible. But she just wanted to see you come up with your own answer, succeed in your own way. And I've always found that that was one of the most fulfilling ways to learn. She was, of course, my senior design mentor. I've had multiple classes with her, and her stories are always interesting. Um, I don't know how to praise her more, just to say that she's a wonderful professor and that you could learn a lot from just sitting down with her and talking to her at a lunchtime. And it's some things, yeah, you might not learn in classes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would love to feature her for this webinar series. I think she'd be fantastic, and I love that you just introduced her because we'll feature Dr. Van Scoy a little bit later on in the webinar series. But she's super passionate about what she does, and she's very much an influence on anybody that meets her. And so I'm very happy that you mentioned her. And then I'm going to end because we like to keep these a little short so they could be used in a classroom for teachers to show their students, just to get them a little bit of an idea. But I want to end on this note. If you had to give any small piece of advice to somebody, to a student that's a girl that's in grades K through 12 anywhere, about the future of computer science and whether or not they can be a part of that, what would you say to them?
I've said it before, you know, you have to start somewhere, whether that is in elementary school, middle school, high school, or even college. You have to start somewhere to be, to progress. Not only that, um, you need to learn to motivate yourself. You know, motivation, can come within. And when you find yourself, you're like, I'm not sure I can do something, you just, you know, motivate yourself to do it. Don't really look, I don't know how to phrase this, but don't really look to others to like compare yourself, but compare yourself to your past self and always want to be better than your previous self. And that way I found you can succeed by looking back.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time. I'm sorry about the technical issues, but this has been a very, I think, beneficial conversation that a lot of people will really get some motivation from. So thank you. Look forward to talking to you in the future and getting together with the Game Developers Club.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.